Welcome, guys. Mr. Midnight is not here, but he will be here soon. Today, we will be looking at some trucker scary stories. Sitting inside one place for a long haul. Sounds boring, but it is, and it might be more exciting than you think. Let's get into this. And always remember the darkness always follows. Sometimes, if you're lucky or not, and you happen to have a passport since 9/11, you may be tasked with delivering cargo into Canada or Mexico. Canada is the obvious choice for most folks, but sometimes you don't get to choose. Carlos is a driver I knew for a number of years, both on the truck and off. Guess who his favorite guitarist is? His grandparents were still in Guadalajara, Mexico, and his folks had come to the USA, legally no less, and settled in El Paso, Texas about 3 years before he was born. Carlos hauled freight for a small, privately owned company based in Corpus, Christi, a fleet of about 10 trucks that specialized in what he called private freight, which probably meant either government or very rich clientele. 90% of the time, Carlos never saw a detailed bill of lading. He just got the basic and most essential info, like weight and whether or not it was hazmat, hazardous material load. Carlos said most of his hauls rarely left Texas or the surrounding states. But on one particular run, he was required to drive the load all the way up to South Dakota, and he was sharing this ride with another gentleman that was there for his safety. This hombre was the type that don't say much. Basically said, pretend I'm not here. I thought it was the kind of rude to be like, hey, I'm gonna be in this truck with you for about 1,300 miles, but don't try to talk to me. Carlos took a swing of his Destrett's Brewery Obsidian Stout. For a man of little other taste, he's a remarkable beer snob, which is one of the many reasons we got along. So we hit the road, and every time we hit a dot stop or scale, this pendejo, who's going all at the paperwork, tells me to stay put. He walks in, and less than a minute later, without a word, he's back in the truck and we're rolling again. Carla said the first day went off without any problems or missteps. His quiet and, in my opinion, a bit menacing from the description passenger kept to himself until Carlos mentioned stopping for the night. As he pulled into a truck stop just outside Colorado Springs, Cluero pulled out a piece of paper and handed it to me. He said, after fueling, go to this address. Turn off your phone and all GPS devices. That was it. I followed the directions to a joint about 9 miles off I-25 and was ushered into a big metal storage facility, like a hangar or something. They had me drop the trailer and park my rig out in a dirt lot. Kulo man stayed with the trailer and I went to suck out in my sleeper. I grabbed him another beer out of my fridge and along with whiskey for me. I sat back down and Carlos continued. So the next morning, tall, dark and Feo wakes me up with a knock on the side of my sleeper. Let's go, he says. I get up and get dressed. Go take a piss and bring the rig back into the hangar. This is where shiz gets weird. There's another trailer next to mine. I can't tell if he's nervous or pissed as he continues. These effing putos tell me there's been damage to your trailer. We will repair and or replace it before you make your return trip. There's a tarp over part of my trailer and what looks like fluid of a sort on the back floor of the hangar. I was only allowed to get out of the truck to go to a quick glance at my new trailer. Freaking thing was brand new. Beautiful, man. I barely thought about what might have damaged my trailer, but in the back of my cabasa, I'm thinking, what the F am I hauling, man? I forgot to mention at the beginning the weight of the cargo. For a little explanation, I'll try to be as brief as possible so I can get back to the story. Now, a regular rig with a sleeper weighs from 17,000 to 22,000 pounds, depending on certain variables, and an average regular trailer weighs about 10,000 pounds empty. When he began his trip, Carlos said his total weight was 55,000 pounds, and he was rolling easy. Any trucker worth his salt knows when there's a difference in weight just by the way it pulls. This shingon was heavy as a mother flipper, brother. I started to drive it out of the kanga, and it was putting a little strain on my rig. It's like if you've been swinging an aluminium bat for years and someone suddenly hands you a wooden bat with a lead core. I stopped and hopped out, thinking maybe these fixties had attached the air hoses wrong and the brakes weren't disengaging properly. They looked right, but I grabbed the hoses and repositioned them anyway. I was about to walk back and check the brakes visually, and the pinch puto hops out and gets in my freaking face. Carlos, get back in the truck now, I tell him. Look, Vato, I'm not going effing anyplace until I know this trailer is safe to roll. I knocked on the side of the trailer to illustrate my irritation, and that effort was solid, like steel plating instead of aluminium. And then the trailer effing rocked, like there was something inside that moved on its own, brother. What the F was that? Pinky, no mames cabron. I backed away from the trailer and Ugly pulled out a effing pistol, man. He's real shifty all of a sudden, and he says, Carlos, please, get back in the truck and let's get rolling. Dude looks scared, so I'm not playing it. I get in the truck and we roll the F out. He tells me to follow the directions, and as soon as we're back on the highway, I can turn my phone and GPS back on. He still looked nervous as he pulled out his phone and began texting someone at light speed, and he kept looking in his rear mirror view. I don't know who he was talking to or what he said, but all the way stations we passed from there on out were closed, which is super crazy. When we got through Cheyenne, Wyoming, we hopped off I-25 onto US 85 and then took the US 18 split at Mule Creek Junction and took that into southwestern South Dakota. After that, he told me to take SR 87 north, and I lose track of all the little roads we turned on. I had my phone and GPS shut down again, so I'm thoroughly effing lost, man. We were bumping down some hard packed dirt road when the trailer lurched to the left. I don't mean sway or drift, that effing thing. The tires came off the ground, moved about 3 feet to the left, and thud, came back to the earth, man. We're talking maximum punka. Factor, brother. My asshole damn near tore a chunk out my seat. Carlos got his own effing beer because I couldn't move. Reviated like a kid hearing a story from Grandpa and trying to remember to scribble notes. Sadolfo Lookhead next to me screams like some goddamn puta that just got her cherry poked. Stop laughing, bro. He pulls out his phone and starts yelling into it. I'm too busy trying keep the rig on the road to pay attention to him. By now I'm probably screaming like a little bitch while this armored trailer is hopping around like whatever is in there really wants out. Great chicados. Dude told me to stop the truck, and I said, Pendejo, who's rolling in the only thing keeping the truck upright, he said. Kinda pale and got quiet as we bounced along now at a blistering 25 miles per hour. He perked up as in the distance we could see black dots in the horizon heading our way. I shiz you not, brother. Effing helicopters. Black Hawks, I think. Anyway, these choppers came up and landed about a half mile ahead of us. I slowed until I got about 100 yards out and I stopped. King Kong or whatever the F was in that trailer was not happy about the noise. I thought for sure the thing was gonna tip. I never got to find out. I felt a sharp pain in my neck and it was lights out, papi. I wake up in my sleeper at a truck stop outside Cheyenne. I had my old trailer back, good as new, and 3 messages on my phone when I turned it on. 2 from mi madre and 1 from the jefe, telling me to get my culo back to El Paso to pick up a load by Friday. I checked my GPS and it was blank, man. Not reset, blank. They wrecked my shiz. I was kinda pissed until I checked my banco. Whoever they were, they bought my silence more or less. Carlos smiled and handed me another beer. I was an over-the-road truck driver for 3.5 years. I could say that I don't miss the 11-hour days if you're running strictly under DOT guidelines. Dragging a 53-foot trailer from one side of the country to the other. That I don't miss being out on the open road for sometimes 6 weeks at a stretch. Crashing at the shittiest looking truck stops out in the middle of nowhere. Eating the most unhealthy food imaginable. But I do. The things I don't miss are the creepy things I encountered in my travels. In this country, according to the Department of Transportation, there are 3,980,817 miles of roads in the United States, 2,605,331 miles paved, and 1,375,486 miles unpaved. With that much road, there are plenty out of the way places for hooky shit to go down. Truck stops are places to rest, refuel, and exchange stories. But mostly you will only hear the stories that will make you laugh or the occasional grievance against the establishment. I use the word occasional with sarcasm because there's nothing truckers love to do more than beat about all the rules and regulations that keep them from making a decent living. The stories you hardly ever hear are the ones that most guys won't tell you unless they have in the bag or they know you really well. When it comes to these stories, truckers are a fairly guarded bunch. You know the drill. Names changed to protect all parties involved and all that. I knew that driver named Hank. I'll call him that because this man loved his Hank Williams Jr. When he told me this story, he was in his late 60s and had about 3 million miles under his belt. You only get those kind of miles if you've been driving most of your life. Hank, along with his love for outlaw country, happened to have a deep, abiding love for getting side jobs that allowed him making a living without the man dipping into his pockets too deeply. Hank was an owner-operator, meaning he owned his own truck and ran his own business out of said truck. A beautifully restored and modified 1969 Peterbilt 359 conventional. Hank knew the old school way of running with 2 sets of logbooks, analog, to play around with the hours and miles restrictions put in place by the DOT for yours and our safety. He knew all the back routes that by DOT standards were barely legal for a truck this size to negotiate. It was on one of these so-called side runs where Hank said he saw something. Well, let me get to that. Hank said he was running one such job between Three Forks, Montana and Twin Falls, Idaho, in the dead of winter. At that time of year, the route he was taking, US 287, could be hit or miss on it. It was properly plowed. But for the money he was getting paid for this haul, he was willing to risk it. The route at times runs along the western edge of the Shoshone National Forest and West Yellowstone National Park, with winding mountain passes and spectacular views if you drive it during the day. Even in the winter, Hank said on this run, the road had been plowed within the last 6 hours, which was doable, but barely optimal conditions, with drifts of snow on the sides of the road from the plows, sometimes reaching heights upwards of 15 to 17 feet. There was scant room for pulling over, should the need arise to do repairs or take a piss. Hank was running through this area, he says, around 2 a.m. There was cloud cover, so it would have been pitch black had the snow not turned into greyish moonscape beyond the range of the headlights. The temperature on the dashboard read a bristling 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Ice crystals bordered the windows. At these temperatures, if you turned off your truck for too long, your diesel fuel would gel and you weren't going anywhere without an expensive thaw-out. Hank shivered as he recounted that night. I was rolling along at steady 62 miles per hour, which I reckon might have been a tad too fast for the conditions. Money will make you do some stupid things, Hank said. He'd been driving Mountain Dew and chain smoking to stay awake through the night, so it was no surprise to him when he had to answer the call of nature. He peeled over to the side of the road as far off the roadway as he could without getting stuck in the deep snow drifts, clambered over to the passenger side door and opened it to piss directly off the top step. When it's that cold out, you gotta hold on tight or your packer will go full turtle on you and you'll piss all over your breeches, he said with a guffaw of laughter. Ain't no sense in getting all the way down if it's just a quick stop, as he told me the rest. It was without his trademark grin. Now, when I say it was cold out, I don't mean it was Arctic-like, but it was more damp than you'd expect at that temperature. I didn't hear a damn thing, no wind, nothing, aside from my piss hitting the snowbank. He lit another cigarette and inhaled deeply. It was damn eerie, and it weren't the cold giving me goose pimples. I shook the dew off the lily, zipped up, and I got the hell out of there. About a half an hour later, I'm back to routine and got nothing but the CB radio on cause the FM and AM ain't worth a goddamn up there. That radio was quiet too, as I reckon weren't any other damn fool out running these parts this time of night. Hank shifted uncomfortably in his seat and drank something from his flask. I heard something about made me jump out my skin and shit myself to boot. Now, I'm used to hearing the occasional bang or rattle as you pick up road debris or some shiz like that. Part of my brain thought it must have been my wheels picking up a chunk of ice and it were bouncing around between the cab and the trailer. But then I heard it again, real distinct like knock, 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 steady, and like someone was knocking on a door wanting in. Hank sat up at this point and his eyes were into me. You can bet your sweet ass there weren't no way in hell I was gonna stop out in the middle of nowhere and see who the F is hanging outside my truck. Knocking nice as you like. No sir, I stepped on the gas. Devil be damned, and hightailed it. Hank was getting a bit agitated, so I handed him some of my moonshine, hoping it'd calm his nerves. Them knocks was coming pretty regularly over the next 3 hours as I shagged ass to Twin Halls. Louder and more insistent as we went. By the time I was 50 miles from town and finally picking up some CB chatter, there was knocking real loud. Hank banged his fist on the table to illustrate how loud. Knock, knock, knock. By this point, I'm not sure if I should be more pissed off or terrified. This mother effer is banging on my cab hard enough to dent it. So I got on the mic and asked if there was anybody around who could drive by my rig to see what the hell is going on, you know. If they could see anything on my catwalk. Everybody was either in a stop or headed out the area the opposite side of town. I figure I'd just get to the nearest truck stop where there's opposite side of town lighting and folks around to look for myself. I slowed for the stoplights cause I sure as hell went stopping for shit before I had some civilization on me. Hank took another cigarette and lit it before continuing. I finally came to a red light. There weren't no one round, so I slowed down and rolled through that some bitch. Got another knock for my efforts and I about squeezed the turd out because I think the mother effer was whispering at me. About 10 minutes later, I pulled into the truck stop all the way into the fuel area where there were bright lights. I jumped out of my cab with my .45 in hand and circled round to the catwalk, giving it a wide berth. There wasn't no hide, no hair of anything or anyone. I looked under the rig to make sure someone wasn't sneaking off. Nothing. I climbed over the catwalk after getting my flashlight to inspect the damage to the door of my cab. There weren't a scratch on my rig. I couldn't sleep for at least a day after that bullshit. Turned in the load and went back to the truck stop and had a few drinks. I was about to thank Hank for his story and go back to my own truck when he grabbed my wrist. That's not the end of it, son. I heard you tell that next spring, when the snow melted, they found a hitchhiker about 50 feet off the ground up on the US 287. No mention of his cause of death, though where they found him round about the area where I stopped for that piss. Nowadays, I piss in bottles and don't stop for shit like less I'm around other folks. Needless to say, I don't stop in the middle of nowhere for anything much either these days. Well guys, I thank you all for listening. I hope these two stories frightened you. They were very interesting and I enjoyed them myself. Obviously, Mr. Midnight is not here yet, but he'll be here soon. He's on one of his little trips. We'll see him soon. But I would like you to remember one of his famous catchphrases. And always remember, the darkness always follows.